Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Kyle Wong. I am 23 years old and I am a real estate agent here out of Denver, Colorado.
Awesome. And so you're a real estate agent. Tell us how much you are projecting to make this year.
This year, 2023, I am projected to make conservatively anywhere from $90,000 to $110,000.
Very nice, very nice. That's really good for your age. So, how did you break into being a real estate agent out here in Denver?
That is a good question. I actually was going to school for mechanical engineering at the time, and I got my foot in the door at a automotive dealer here in town. And during the COVID times, I did a little bit of reflecting, and I was like, where I think I want to end up, which was finishing school, getting my degree, opening my own shop, and then doing all the fun stuff that you do as a hobby for cars. I was like, I actually don't want that. COVID made me realize there's too much volatility in it, and it's a lot of work being in the automotive industry. Not that I'm against hard work or anything, just it wasn't where I saw myself being, making the most value. Or making the most impact rather. It's crazy looking back on this because I happen to be thinking about real estate. Always loved homes. I love design and architecture and also city infrastructure. And I had a family friend reach out and he's like, hey, I'm in real estate. Would you like to shadow me? And I'm like, yeah, of course I would. We met one time and decision was made. He's like, and he warned me, he's like, it's going to be hard. You may not make a lot of money in the first couple of years. And I'm one of those people that's like all or nothing. And so I just dove in head first. And so quit the job at the automotive, at the dealership pretty much, and stopped pursuing my degree and shadowed him while I was taking my courses, which took about 6 months, and got licensed and hit the ground running.
Awesome. How long have you been licensed now?
Just under 3 years. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Have you been doing real estate those full 3 years?
Yes, I have. Completely uninterrupted, and I have never had a side job. Nothing against that. But I was like, look, either I'm going to put everything into real estate or I'm going to go halvesy, and it can't be both.
Yeah, no, totally understand that. That makes a lot of sense. So then when you were in school, so you dropped out of college, what type of student were you?
Oh, I'm going to be honest, ever since I was young, I was not a very good one. And the reason why is because I was always, not to be like braggadocious or anything, but I was always a pretty smart kid. And so things weren't that hard for me. So I would procrastinate like crazy because I knew I didn't have to study much for tests. I wouldn't work too hard on homework because I knew I would make it up in tests. So it didn't matter. And unfortunately, that caught up with me. I mean, once you get into the later years in your secondary education, things are hard. Things are really hard. And so I just got lazy and I was not applying myself.
Right now, absolutely. I totally relate to that. I was same type of student, just way too easy, didn't want to be there, and differences carried it out, but did not really need college to get into what I wanted to do, which is very similar. So is this kind of the path you saw yourself following when you were younger?
Not really. I think it was really cool because during the high school years I could see in my mind almost like what is it called, like a tree chart, or that organizational chart where like if I go here then I have this sort of option, or if I go here I have this sort of option, and I could see things less linearly and more like that, if that makes sense. And all of a sudden I would see, okay, if I go to school for this degree, this is what I can do. If I go to the Air Force Academy, this is what I can do. And I don't want to say I ever saw being a real estate agent or being in the real estate profession at all as what I was going to do, but I knew it was definitely a possibility. And whatever I was going to do, this sounds so cliche, but I was going to try my hardest at it and see if it worked. And that's another one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into sales, is because working at the automotive industry, I was not a salesman. I was in the service side, so it was very consistent, right? I had a consistent paycheck every 2 weeks, and I liked that. Didn't want to go into sales because I'm like, that's just too much volatility for me. Like, I can't do that. And so naturally I get into a sales position, and it was scary. It was a really big leap. But now we're here looking back almost 3 years, and it's crazy to reflect on that. But
yeah, no, I totally get that. That's one thing that I think a lot of people just kind of fall into, what they don't foresee themselves kind of pursuing, that they fall into it. And there's so many, different career fields out there where people don't necessarily understand how to break into, or or think about it as being a potential path, and they fall into it, and then they're just natural fit, you know, and all it takes is hard work and dedication. I think you really nailed that down. Wonderful. Well,
I was gonna say one thing about that is like when you're a doctor or an engineer, you don't really fall into that because it's like, hello, I'm going to school. Sometimes there's residency, like that's a long time. Being a real estate agent, 6 months, $500 usually is what it takes. And so a lot of people do fall into it, and then they fall out just because the barrier to entry, I always say, is pretty thin. Right. It's pretty easy to do. It's not easy to do for a long time though, and it's not that easy to do very well. Just like most things.
Right. No, absolutely. It takes the grit, the dedication, and the hard work behind it. No, absolutely. So what does your average week look like?
Ooh. What I think is super cool about my average week is that it's on a day-to-day basis, it's pretty different. I'm not just in an office. I'm not just at home working, and I'm not just on showings all the time. Like first and foremost, I'll start internally. I've got a team. We're the Moxie real estate team under EXP. And so on Tuesdays specifically, we have our internal meetings. We got our team meetings to go through some things, talk numbers. And then we have our one-on-ones to make sure we're holding each other accountable, making sure we're all good. Mondays, I usually set aside for sort of my personal catch-up stuff, right? Recap the weekend, plan for the rest of the week, all that kind of stuff. Send out emails, schedule all the stuff that I need to, review personal finances, business finances, and then, obviously Tuesday we've got internal stuff, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's more external stuff. So client facing, going on showing, setting appointments with vendors, so that people like title company reps or other people that we work with, so contractors, and then lenders are a big partner of ours. But we do anything. I mean, just last week I met an interior designer for lunch, and she was incredible. She's got an amazing story. But it's always different. I will say I spend a lot of time on the road. So if you don't like driving, maybe this isn't for you. You can hire a driver at some point. But I drive a lot. So I don't like necessarily sitting in front of the computer all day, but usually it's broken up by meetings or lunches. And some of them are really fun, actually. I enjoy a lot of the meetings that I have as long as they're, accomplishing my personal business goals. So.
Right. You gonna plug 0 to 60 marketing?
0 to 60
networking
group. Used to be a bunch of guys and gals who got together and really liked cars. But after a while, we're like, hey, we all own businesses and do different stuff. Why don't we support each other? So we had our print shop guy make hats, shirts, all the fun stuff. And then we had our web design developer create a website and a paywall, and we have this awesome site set up with marketing and stuff done through Facebook and all these things. So 0 to 60 networking.
Wonderful.
Talk to them.
Awesome. So when you get into real estate, how do you start drumming up business? How do you start growing yourself and growing your team?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. If I knew, I would be... No, I'm just kidding. Well, it can be different for anybody. And I always say there's a freedom within a framework, right? There are things that have worked before for other people, and you should follow basic guidelines. I mean, this is just basic sales or really basic business. But for me personally, a couple big legs of my business are social media. So part of that marketing is just started out because it was free. I'm like, hello, could I pay $3,000 a month to a marketing agency to do all this stuff for me? Or could I just hop on Instagram and be like, hey guys. So social media is a big one for me.
Right.
And then initially, just a personal story, I didn't really have a lot going into it. And I was like, look, I'm a rookie and I'm going to act like it. So I'm going to take the tools and resources that I have and use them. So when you get into the MLS, which is the multiple listing service for real estate agents out there, you see a little list in your dashboard called expired. And this was during COVID times where, man, homes were flying off the shelves, right? You didn't have to do a lot to market them necessarily. You pretty much put an iPhone photo up on the MLS and they get sold. Totally kidding. Don't do that, by the way. But that being said, I was like, look, I have experience on the phones. I am decent with talking to people. So I'm going to go for the highest dollar listings that I can. So I went 2.5 million plus and I started calling people. I'm like, hey, notice your house was on the market. You wanted to sell it, but it looks like you couldn't. Is there any particular reason why? And I didn't have the money for a marketing budget. And a lot of these homes, you can spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on marketing for these really nice luxury homes. And so I would refer them out. And what that means is, as an agent, if you have a client that's ready to buy or sell a home, you send that to another agent who can take care of that, and they just cut you a check for it. And so it's not like I was, imposing any other fee on my clients. It was just me saying, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to give you the client, but I just want something for it. And that was a big part of my business up front. I'm actually getting a little bit back more into that, just going back to basics. But I think that's really cool, because a lot of rookies, they just go right in and they're like, I want to be millionaire real estate agents, Ryan Serhant, selling $24 million houses, like penthouses. And it's like, hold on. Let's start with leases. Let's start with the little things. And we'll get there eventually.
Right, you got to build yourself up. You can't just expect to jump in and be selling those insane penthouses and getting those huge commission checks. You got to build yourself up to that and really understand the market to it, the niche, and everything in between. So no, it's wonderful news. Well, what kind of advice would you give someone that wants to break into real estate, specifically luxury real estate?
Ooh, yeah. So first and foremost, if you have no experience in real estate or in sales, I would say have some cushion built up. I didn't do this, and sometimes I was hurting a little bit, right? Because it's feast or famine. Either you're making a lot of money or you're making nothing. So no ceiling, but no floor, and one's exciting, one's not so exciting. So start there. I'm not one of those people that says have a backup plan. Like, if you need to get a side job to start you out and ease into learning the business, then do what you have to do. There's no shame in that. But you know what? Like, put the time in, put the effort in. Like, learn how to learn and have humility in that. Because if you go into it thinking like you're some hotshot, you're the best, you're gonna fall, and you're gonna fall hard. So don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Get into it, and then target your niche as soon as you can. A lot of people want to be everything to everybody, and unfortunately you just can't. Bigger businesses know this best. That's a lot of B's. Bigger businesses know this best, but when you get into an industry, start with the little thing that you're good at and expand from there. I mean, I always kind of equate this to like a brain surgeon, right? Those are people who are extremely, extremely skilled at a very small thing, literally and metaphorically. That should be you with your market. Target a neighborhood, target a niche, veterans, first-time home buyers, investors, whatever it is. Get really, really good at it, and then once you're good at that and you have dominated that space, then expand from there so that you can gain market share in other areas. But that takes time.
Right. Would you say that's why a lot of real estate agents kind of burn out in their first, couple of years?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. They don't really know how to niche down, and so again, they just want to be the everybody's agent for everything, and you just can't. It's impossible to be an expert at everything. We're just limited like that. Another reason would be running the business, and that's one thing I'll touch on for a moment, if you will, is when you get into real estate and you learn the things that I've learned, at least from my perspective, it's not like any other job. And I'm not saying that to like elevate real estate agents into something they're not, but with jobs, you talk to somebody, you have an interview, you have an onboarding process, and then boom, you have a job where you're paid every 2 weeks, and you have training and consulting and usually KPI to meet, and quarterly goals and all that stuff. With real estate, if I want to be eating tacos on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. super drunk, I could do that. Nobody's telling me no. I don't have a boss. And everybody's like, oh sweet, I don't have a boss, I can make 6 figures a year. Yes. But also, you don't have a boss. So you know what that makes you? Your boss. And guess what? If you don't have an assistant, that makes you your assistant. So keep that in mind when it comes to setting up your schedule and setting up your goals, because whoever is making you $100,000 a year, or if you want to make $100,000 a year, whatever that goal is, guess what? You're your sales team. You are your management. You are your secretary, your accountant. You are all of those things until you hire them out. So guess what? You are doing it all. And don't forget that it's a business.
So. Right, absolutely. So that goes back to the motivation and making sure you stay driven and hungry. Awesome. No, it's great. So, you mentioned kind of the struggling. Sounds like you're in a pretty good place now. Hopefully no more, those days are long gone. Absolutely. Yeah, right. What do you do in terms of saving and investing nowadays?
Good question. So I initially started, actually before real estate, I was into Graham Stephan, and I was into all of the other guys who were talking about like, here's how you maximize your IRA, all of that stuff. And again, I'm not discounting that. Those are super important. But what I will say is I was hyper focused on a couple percent. And so I used to, I still contribute to my Roth IRA, obviously. Or is it traditional? I should probably know this. Either way, I used to put money into accounts like that, but what I was failing to realize was that my income wasn't high enough for that to make enough of a difference, right? And so, 4%, 5%, 7%, that doesn't matter if you're making 25K a year, that much, right? So what I needed to focus on was actually just increasing my income. And I know this is something that's become more common to say these days, but now what I'm focused on more is increasing my income, right? So how valuable is my time? Are my inputs actually getting the output that is required? Or is it more one-to-one? So leveraging my time and my activities to something that actually makes sense. So these days I'm more focused on savings. I'm actually under contract to purchase my own house, so savings is big for me right now. I need to have a little bit of wiggle room there, but unfortunately, no, I'm actually not actively investing right now.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, congratulations on the house. It's a big move.
Thank you.
The one thing I will kind of plug in here is, while you may not have a ton of income in your younger years, you do have a lot of time, and what you can do with that time is, the gains might be smaller, you might be making less contributions, but one thing that's always stuck with me is, $5 a day at 18 will eventually turn into $1 million at retirement age. And so that's something that is really, really important to keep in mind. And as you start losing more time, you gain more money that you can then contribute, and hopefully those dollars grow just as much.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years? Well, like I said, when I first got into real estate, if anything, it just opened my eyes to the business, not just the business as in real estate, but business as a whole, which ironically was like my least favorite college course was business. But after having experienced it firsthand and seeing how amazing it really can be, diving into everything, I've learned what I'm good at, but more importantly, I think I've learned what I'm not good at. And I'm not like the most amazing salesperson. I like talking to people, but I'm also not necessarily the best like back-end processes guy, like doing data entry and stuff like that. Just different minds for different stuff. So I personally, this might sound a little vague, I guess, but I like seeing people operate at their highest and best. I like seeing people that are happy. I like seeing people that are really, really good at what they do, being truly experts in their field, whatever that is. If they're the ones behind the scenes, if they're the ones in front of the camera, if they're the ones listening to this right now, whatever you're good at, I want to see you be really good at it. So I personally like the consulting, training, hiring aspect of other people. And so 5 years might be a little far out, but at some point I would love to be a team lead where I'm consulting other agents, onboarding other agents, refining their businesses to dial things in and maximize their income and also their impact in their communities. I think that would be really cool. Who knows? Maybe it progresses to owning a brokerage at that point, but I would say probably a team lead for a real estate team. And I would personally, as an investment, because I failed to say this earlier, I see real estate as a huge investment. I would love to retire off of a huge real estate portfolio. And I totally understand having other accounts, diversifying my portfolio is important, but that's my primary goal. I wanna retire off of real estate. So I would love to have in 5 years at least 2 investment properties that I use as either short or long-term rentals in my portfolio. That would be really cool.
Wonderful. Love to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other closing notes?
That's it. If you guys are looking to get into this, I would highly recommend it. Be prepared, be smart, talk to people like me, talk to locals that are in the same position, and go for it.
Awesome.
Just do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. My name is Tyler Smith, and this has been the Professional Network. I really appreciate you for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, criticism. We'd love to hear it all. Thank you.
Thank you.